Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to today's Concordia Live, held in partnership with Concordia's global patron member, Save the Children. My name is Hannah Delman. I'm Senior Director of Partnerships, and it's my real pleasure to be kicking off today's conversation. Save the Children has brought important matters to light through past Concordia events, and today's discussion on the healing power of art as a rehabilitative and emotional support outlet for displaced and refugee children and others around the world is no different. Before I turn to today's moderator, Negin Janati, I'd like to offer some very small housekeeping guidance. For those of you who are members and joined Concordia Lives in the past, welcome back, and we hope you continue to join into the conversations via the platform's features. For those of you new to this platform and joining as guests of Save the Children or our panelists, welcome. Concordia is a New York-based nonprofit dedicated to promoting public-private partnerships and positive social impact through our Convene, Connect, Create model of member benefits. We're best known for our annual convening, which serves as the preeminent global forum alongside the UN General Assembly each fall. And I'm so pleased to note that this year's event will be hybrid and allow for both in-person and digital attendance. But we also have a robust year-round program as well, dedicated and with dedicated team members to support our members like Save the Children in their partnership design, growth, and implementation strategies. And you can learn more about membership, our annual summit, and ways to participate on our website or by connecting with any Concordia team member. We utilize the SpotMe platform that you're watching today's event for all of our virtual engagements, from this panel today to our annual summit coming up. The platform allows for you to introduce yourself and your related work via the newsfeed. We really encourage you to do that. It allows you to ask questions to the panelists, which will be passed to Negin at around the 12:45 mark, and to even access older recorded sessions. These also live on our website, of course. We want to make these discussions as dynamic as possible, and Negin will be opening questions. And so please do make sure that you're logged in and fully participating. And I'll say, especially with this particular one, which has such a strong visual component to it, make sure you don't have a million tabs up, that you're not just listening, but you're looking at these images and watching the video because it's very well worth your eyes. This session will be recorded with a summary and video available on our website post-event. And we'll be live tweeting key remarks from today's speakers and encourage you to join the conversation over social media as well by following @Concordia or @Save the Children. So speaking of our amazing panelists, it's now my sincere pleasure to welcome Diala Brisley, David Henry Gerson, and Sara Hommel to the proverbial Concordia stage and to hand things over to Negin. Negin, thank you so much for moderating, and we really look forward to today's discussion.
Thanks so much for having us, Hannah. It's always great to do things in partnership with Concordia. So I'll start by just setting a bit of the context of what has been going on in Syria and where things stand now, and then I'll introduce our panelists. So it's been 10 years since the start of the uprisings in Syria, and the country is still caught up in a war that's displaced millions and killed hundreds of thousands. The last death toll estimated by the UN in 2016 was more than 400,000 people. They stopped counting after that, but the Syrian Observatory of Human Rights placed the toll closer to 600,000 as of last December. Beyond that, due to massive damage to homes, schools, hospitals, and infrastructure, large parts of Syria have been shattered by the fighting. Syria's economy has deteriorated, pushing almost 80% of the country below the poverty line. There's limited shelter, fuel is scarce, and food prices are soaring. For children in Syria who were struggling before the COVID-19 pandemic, things have only gotten worse. After 10 years of conflict and displacement, nearly 12.5 million people, including more than 6 million children, are now struggling to find food. Many of Syria's children and their families live in areas where basic services are almost non-existent. The essential infrastructure they rely on, such as healthcare, education, water, and hygiene services have been decimated. As the pandemic continues, Syrian refugee families are being pushed even further into poverty. As boys drop out of school to help their families survive, they face increased risk of exploitation by armed groups. Girls in Syria face high risk of child trafficking and sexual exploitation, including child marriage. And more than 40% of school-age children are out of school in Syria. And to give you some context, before the war, Syria had incredibly high levels of children in school and doing very well. According to the UN, Syria is the worst man-made disaster since World War II. So that's the context, the backdrop against which artists are creating beauty and children and families are trying to find a way to continue their lives and grow toward their futures. We have three incredible speakers in today's discussion. Diala Brisley is a brilliant artist from Syria. Diala grew up in Damascus and was based there until the uprising sent her and many other artists fleeing into different countries until she finally received asylum in France, where she kept working on her projects as a freelancer. Currently, Diala mostly focuses on spotlighting the education situation of Syrian kids and refugees in general. And in 2014, she started her own initiative of making murals in the refugee camps and alternative education centers between Lebanon and Turkey to encourage kids to go back to school after skipping a few years because of the war. In parallel, Diala was doing art workshops for kids and adults to help them express themselves while also working on well-being and psychological themes recently, like post-trauma. Sara Hommel is the Senior Advisor for Mental Health and Psychosocial Support at Save the Children. Sara has more than 20 years of experience in global development and humanitarian response programming for children and families. In her current role, Sara leads the Mental Health and Psychosocial Support portfolio, including Save the Children's HEART program, which stands for Healing and Education Through the Arts. Prior to joining Save the Children, Sara spent 7 years at the Brookings Institution, where she designed and managed research and advocacy on global education, health, and nutrition programs, and policies for young children. Before her time at Brookings, she worked with several NGOs addressing the needs of children affected by conflict and poverty in multiple countries. In addition to her multiple academic degrees, Sara is also classically trained as a musician and studied art, music, and drama therapy during both her undergraduate and postgraduate studies. And finally, David Henry Gerson is the filmmaker who created The Story Won't Die. David has won prizes from the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, which is the group behind the Oscars, you may have heard of, the Sundance Film Festival, and has been acquired into the permanent collection at the Museum of Modern Art in New York. He's a graduate of Columbia University and the American Film Institute, where he was the recipient of the Richard P. Rogers Award for Creative Excellence. The Story Won't Die is his first feature-length documentary, but I'm sure we'll see many more. So with that, we'll show you a short trailer of The Story Won't Die now to give everyone a sense of the film and help drive part of our discussion.
Come in. This is my room. This is where I work, this is where I sleep, this is where I overthink.
Like I born to be on stage.
Tripoli, waiting for the ship, trip to Turkey, swag, whatever.
That was amazing. It was shocking for them to see Syrian refugees. They are like rock stars coming from the sea.
Luckily, I'm an artist, so I have space to use my memories.
I couldn't resist that temptation to scream against the whole history of Syria, against the whole establishment that is called Syria.
Art can talk about politics, but politics can't ever talk about art.
Became like a wave of people leaving.
12 million out of the country, and the regime is still there. It's big fun.
When I just want to get life, you know, follow my dreams, and also to help my mother to go out from Syria.
Through the people that I've known, oh, if you would and you could, straight in my new mind's eye.
I'm proud of what we did, this amazing movement that rose out of nothing. Like it's really rise out of ashes.
So powerful. I had the honor of watching the whole thing, and I hope you all have that same opportunity. So, David, I'll start with a question to you. What inspired you to create this film?
Well, first off, thank you all for joining us today and for making this happen. I really appreciate it. My father was born as a refugee in Samarkand, Uzbekistan at the end of World War II. And I guess growing up, I was always told very much so, never forget. And when I read kind of what you were saying, Negin, that this was the worst displacement of people since World War II, I just felt, oh, I better do something. And what one can do is a very tricky road to go down, I guess. And the other speakers probably know much better than I. My means of action is storytelling, is filmmaking. So I went to Lesbos, to Greece, and started interviewing people and started asking questions and meeting incredibly inspiring people who had come through this crisis and we're taking a very active stance in doing the very difficult work that artists do of processing this darkness. And so we started just filming these interviews, meeting people like Diala, and learning, certainly for me, about how people used their voices through art, through sharing stories in the uprising 10 years ago, how that maybe didn't go exactly as planned, and led to sort of, the mass exodus. And then the question of how they continue to use their voices and their art to process, like I said, the darkness that they had run from. So that's kind of how I got into all of this. And I would also say that when I first started, the idea of the Syrian refugee crisis, to me, was this image that we often see. I kind of see like the Pietà image of sort of the Virgin Mary holding the child in her arms. My grandmother, who was on my mother's side, immigrants to the United States, had a painting by Katie Kollwitz, or a print by Katie Kollwitz, who was a German printmaker reacting to World War I. And in the image, the mother, this Pietà image I'm speaking of, is a skeletal figure holding the skeleton of a child. And this sort of, we used to like watch The Price is Right on TV as a kid, and over the TV was this horrifying image. And I guess I just got very curious, who are the Katie Kollwitzes? Who are the Picasso Guernica? Who are the Goya 3rd of May, or the Primo Levis of the Syrian refugee crisis? And that's really what led us to telling this story and making this film.
Fantastic. What were you hoping to convey through it?
I guess that the people who I started to meet on this journey were much more, for lack of a better word, like myself in some ways. Not this sort of victim or this otherworldly image, but people who really were the same as me. And in my country, in the United States, we had gone to the lowest numbers of refugees being welcomed to this country since World War II, and that felt odd to me and problematic. Certainly in my understanding of what this country stands for. But more so, I wanted to reach out to people who are maybe younger, maybe 18 years old, and show that this crisis isn't just statistics, isn't just pictures of bombed out buildings. These are human beings, obviously, and incredibly inspiring human beings that we can really learn great lessons from. And fortunately for us, we'll be able to learn some of those lessons directly from one of them today, Diala.
Thank you so much. And what a great segue into Diala. Thank you so much for joining us. Diala, so you are one of the artists featured in the film, and would love to know what made you want to participate in it.
Yeah, it's like David said, it's just it shouldn't be just a statistic, and we don't want to be just numbers in the news. So for me, it's very important to have a closer look at our personal story, to personalize our crisis. So that was my my aim, especially when I'm in Europe. I see like there are people, they really shortcut all what is happening with ISIS or with like things like really they don't know much about. And for us, it's really not fair that we started the revolution to have a big change, and we didn't succeed with this. So it's very important for us to narrate our own story. So for us, we don't want other people to narrate our story. We need to narrate our story. And after like participating in the film, also it was it was important for me because I saw other people's experiences that it's really similar to mine. And because like sometimes when we go parachuting from a society to another, we feel alienated. And now when we see like we have similar experiences, I'm not the only one who has this, and we are all struggling with being labelized as a refugee artist and all that. It's really important to hear other people's experiences as well through this.
And what was your experience in Syria and leaving Syria?
Like I started working in art in 2001. I wasn't really satisfied with what I'm doing. I learned a lot from this journey. I don't underestimate it, but there was a big lack of expression, especially under dictatorship. So for me, like in 2011, it was a big chance for all of us to just explode and start to express our needs, our experiences, also what is happening in Syria and political term. But all that, it pushed many of us to leave Syria and find safety in other countries.
I'm from Iran, and my mom is always trying to make a point to everyone that pre-revolution in Iran, pre-Islamic revolution, Tehran was like Paris. Did you feel like it was that big of a day and night between before the war and after?
To be honest, like a lot of people, they point at Syria that it was a safe place before the war. What I really like to say that there is like a parallel life underground and over the ground since Hafez al-Assad took place in this government, and it was like 50 years ago or so. So for us, it was never safe. Sometimes we are in danger to be stopped in the middle of the night because we walk more than 5 people in the street, and arresting, it's something normal in Syria. So we wanted, this is why we started the revolution. For many people, the war started in 2011, but for us, we always lived in a very silent war. Like it's just like if we can't see people, they are getting tortured underground. Like sometimes there was a mall opened in an area, and it was really very dark for me to go to this mall because I know underneath this there is like a big torturing area, a lot of prisons. So it's just like if we can really use our imagination, we know that it's not everything we can't see, that it doesn't exist. So we just know, like from many families, that they have family members, they got arrested or disappeared, and they never heard about them, and it's not allowed even to grieve about this. So this was really very like painful to deal with. For us, we wanted to do the revolution, especially for the detainees.
Yeah, and how have you used your art to help children dealing with the war and even yourself?
Like my first experience to work with traumatized kids from war, it was with Iraqis in 2010. I didn't have much experience, but when I moved to Istanbul and I saw like the political activism doesn't work anymore because we are not really decision makers. So I decided to go to Lebanon to work with kids like kind of art therapy, because I didn't study it. So I was doing workshops and taking advices from my therapist friends. And I think like that was very helpful for them and for me as well. It was really very important to give them tool to express their pain. It wasn't really easy to put it in words for them, especially they didn't have therapy. And kids in a refugee camp, they are traumatized from the war. They are traumatized from living in a refugee camp. They are traumatized from like working early and being adults in a very early age. So it was really very important to put all this suffering in colors, and they did a lot of sad and painful painting in the beginning. But also, like after this phase, we were working, me and many other activists, to have different tools to protect themselves and to concentrate on their power as well, and which taught me as well how to live the moment, how to really live in the present, because once we go there in the refugee camp, they immediately forget everything they had and they will have after, and they just join us and get involved immediately. So because I didn't allow myself to have this fun time after leaving Syria because of the guilt feeling. And when I saw how kids, they, with all their like innocence, they just think of the moment. So I thought, if I am going to help other people, I have to be strong myself. And this is what I learned from the kids.
That's so nice. Thank you, Diala. Sara, over to you. So you did study art therapy, and how does Save the Children's Heart program help children facing or processing these stressful events or experiences?
Thanks, and thank you everyone for joining us and for hosting this event, and to all the panelists. It's very nice to be here with you today. So the HEART program, which stands for Healing and Education Through the Arts, is an arts-based psychosocial support program used by Save the Children in more than 30 countries around the world. To date, the program has supported more than 1 million children. The program is based on the methods and techniques of the creative arts therapies, meaning it uses multiple forms of expressive arts, but it is designed to be non-clinical in its approach, meaning it's not a specialized mental health intervention or an art therapy program, rather something we refer to as structured psychosocial support that is implemented in group settings facilitated by non-mental health professionals, such as teachers in schools or trained facilitators in community centers, which we often refer to as child-friendly spaces. What HEART actually looks like in practice is that on a daily basis, children engage in short, meaning anywhere from 2 to 10 minutes, short arts-based relaxation activities that often use music or dramatic play to support children to engage in muscle relaxation or breathing, things that help them to physically and mentally relax. These are very short and simple activities that can be done every day in a classroom or a center. And in addition to those daily short activities, the HEART program also includes a longer structured session about once per week, where children engage in a structured step-by-step art making activity, which is facilitated by a trained adult, such as a teacher in a classroom. And during this process, they create art either individually or in groups with the structured guidance from the teacher. And this art making follows a very specific topic or theme that is intended to address feelings and emotions and to support stress processing. And after they finish the art making process, the children then come together in a circle, what we call a sharing circle, in which they sit facing each other with the adult facilitator, and they share their art and what it represents or what it means to them. And they discuss their feelings, their ideas, their experiences. This is a support group communication model through which the sharing process helps to develop understanding of themselves and each other. In addition to that structured activity, we also organize once per week a shorter, what we call an open arts activity, which is essentially a dedicated time and space where the children get to engage in a specific art form with no specific structure, no guidance. They just get to do whatever they want with that art form. And each week this changes. So one week it will be drawing, another painting, bookmaking, sculpture, music, dance, drama, all different art forms. And this open session also includes a sharing circle, so that once the art making is finished, that supportive communication mechanism is always available at the end of this longer session. So the idea is that in Heart, by integrating these three types of expressive arts activities into the regular life of the classroom, we support children in a variety of ways. So over time, engaging in such activities regularly, daily and weekly, children are able to creatively express themselves, and they see the artwork and they hear the experience of others. Through this, they develop understanding of themselves and of their peers. They gain understanding that it's normal and it's okay to experience many different feelings and emotions. They become increasingly bonded, empathetic, and supportive of both themselves and each other. And over time, what this does is it transforms the classroom into an artistically creative and emotionally supportive environment. It's also important to note that the program intentionally uses many different art forms, from drawing to painting, sculpture, music, dance, drama. And this approach of using multiple art forms is intentional because each of these art forms stimulates the brain in a different way. We know that during a stress response, brain function changes. Part of the brain, such as the frontal lobe, actually becomes less functional. The way that each art form correlates to senses, such as touch, sight, sound, or facilitates processes like decision-making, such as selecting which colors to use in a drawing or painting. This all promotes a process of what we would refer to as multiple lobe stimulation in the brain, meaning that different parts of the brain are being stimulated in different ways. For example, if a child is hearing music, this stimulates the temporal lobe, which is also the part of the brain that supports memory. If a child is sculpting and feeling the clay in their hand, this sense of touch relates to the parietal lobe, where language processing is also supported. If a child is making decisions about which color crayon or paint to use or how to go about using it, these decision-making processes correlate to the frontal lobe, which is the part of the brain most commonly affected by stress, where cognitive function and social interaction is controlled. So the idea is that by ensuring exposure to and engagement with different art forms, different senses will be used, different processes of decision-making and problem-solving and organizing will take place, and therefore different parts of the brain will be stimulated in ways that support positive brain function. And that not only promotes stress recovery, but it also supports learning and development. So it's important to note that the impact of Heart can be social, emotional, and neurological, and that this combination helps to promote mental health and psychosocial well-being, as well as learning and development in children.
Thank you so much, Sara. And how has Heart specifically supported children affected by the crisis in Syria?
So Heart has been supporting children affected by the Syria crisis for the last 8 years. Our very first programming with Heart in response to the conflict in Syria was in child-friendly spaces or community centers in the Zatri refugee camp in Jordan. And this work started in 2013. Since that time, Heart has expanded across the region to support Syrian children in many different locations, including community centers and schools in Syria and in countries that are hosting Syrian refugees, such as Iraq, Jordan, Lebanon, and Egypt.
Thank you so much. David, the first question came in for you. Congratulations, and how can we view the full featured film?
It's a great question. But even before I answer that, Sarah, that's fascinating and such an interesting clinical way of thinking about some of these more abstract ideas that we were looking at in the film. So just fascinating to hear all that. The film premiered at Hot Docs in April. It was at AFI Docs in the US. It's about to have its European premiere sometime this fall, to be determined. The film is not yet publicly available. We're still out to distributors. If you are a distributor or you know distributors, give me a call. But you can go to our website, thestorywon'tdie.com, or you can follow us on Instagram and Facebook at The Story Won't Die, and keep posted there about where it'll be screening around the country, or email me and we can talk, dhg@davidhenrygerson.com. So that's a few ways, and I'm sure we can email that out to you somehow a little more elegantly.
You definitely want to see it, though. Take that time. Diala, the next question came in for you. Can you provide a specific memory you have where your relationship with art provided you comfort during crisis?
This question. In general, I have many memories about this. When I was in Istanbul, I couldn't manage to have a normal life socially, and also when I've been there, I thought like I'm going for a few months and I'm coming back, but apparently it didn't end up yet. But so that encouraged me to do art more and more. But in the same time, I was addicted to the news and covering what is happening with art. So that helped me to express what is happening. But in the same time, it got me more involved in the news that I got from Syria. When I lost my brother when I was in Istanbul, I couldn't draw for a month. Then I did a drawing. I call it "Be My Leg, I Will Be Your Arm." It's just like to express that we all lost something. We all as Syrian, we lost something, but in this way we can support each other's. Like Sara was talking about, like how like in the workshop with the kids, when they learn how to support each other's. Also us as adults and an activist, when we know that all of us, we lost someone and we lost a lot of things. So for me, this is the biggest memory, this illustration, "Be My Leg, I Will Be Your Arm."
Thank you. And sorry, go ahead, David.
You can hear more of these stories in the film. There's some great moments though where we see sort of Diala's really beautiful drawings like this one right here. And we're able to sort of go into those stories a little bit.
I was so enthralled with what Diala was saying in the beginning that I forgot to share some of her beautiful work. So I'll show you some so that you see how powerful they are. And Diala, thank you so much for sharing that those personal insights with us. Sorry. I mean, this says so much. So thank you for that. Sara, the next question came in for you, and that was, sorry, just pulling it up. So is this form of mental health support used in other areas, or is it typically only used for children who have experienced violence or conflict?
That's a very good question. So the HEART program is used to support children in many different countries all over the world, and it's intended to support children's stress processing no matter what the cause of that stress. Some children are affected by conflict and violence, others by other stressors, things like natural disasters or other emergencies, some by disease, by epidemics and pandemics, or poverty, or any number of compounding stressors where a child may be affected by multiple things that cause them stress at one time. So the approach of HEART is meant to be very simple, very basic, and general enough to be applicable to many different contexts. But I would re-emphasize that the HEART program is what we consider to be psychosocial support, not clinical mental health, not a clinical approach. So a child with a specialized mental health need needs to access specialized clinical mental health support in addition to HEART. What we do in HEART is we create regular and consistent emotional support through the arts. And in many cases, this is often enough to support many of the children we encounter in our work in Save the Children, because it means that they're coming every day to a classroom or a center where they are met with creative expression opportunities. They are met by caring adult facilitators and by peers who care about their feelings and their ideas and their experiences. And this emotionally supportive environment is enough to help them to process and recover from stress. But for those children that do require more specialized clinical mental health services, we actually train HEART facilitators to be able to identify when such a need exists and to then access what we would refer to as a process of referral to make sure that that child that is in need of more specialized clinical mental health support gets referred to a specialized mental health service beyond what we actually deliver through the HEART program.
Mm-hmm. I know in my experience with the child-friendly services, child-friendly spaces that you mentioned, that they're also all trained in psychological first aid, which I thought was such a fascinating concept of when a child is coming from this really intense situation, whether that's a conflict, an armed conflict or a natural disaster. What do you do and how do you act and what do you say to make sure they're not re-traumatized? That in asking certain questions, you're not drawing up really painful memories, but rather helping them build the resilience to move past them.
And that's a great point. We actually, before we initiate the HEART program, we actually train all of the facilitators on the psychological first aid approach, which is all based on the concept of looking, listening, and referring, understanding what someone's emotional support needs are in the moment, providing them immediate attention and support, listening to them, and then connecting them to the specialized services and supports that will provide them the help that they need at that time.
Thank you so much. Diala, are you working with any children virtually in Syria or the refugee communities around you?
Like sometimes I travel to in Europe to meet groups of Syrian refugees, but during COVID I don't travel anymore. And I went twice to Lebanon after I moved to France. but in general, I used to work way more when I was in Lebanon. I was closer, so the only thing that I kept it going is painting murals, and since I was doing them already on the tent, that it's a fabric, so I'm doing them on canvas, folding them, sending them to Lebanon. Still, there is lack of like working together, working with the kids, but I don't want to stop it. Like at least I can send the artwork to this school tents that we are working on. Actually, I'm working with an organization called Zeltschule. It's established by a woman called Jacqueline Flory from Munich, and I send them to her, and she takes them to Lebanon.
Thank you. You have a very happy bird near you. Another question from the audience for you, Diala. They say, thank you for sharing your story with us. How can we support your work and the work of other Syrian artists?
Well, this is a very wide question. There is many ways. For me, my biggest concern is like supporting alternative education. If you want to support artists themselves, maybe purchase their work, their artwork. This is also a good idea. But also, I can give you Zeltschule link so they can also donate for them, because for me this project is amazing. It started in 2015, and it started like really with fundraising, like kind of garage sale, and now it's much bigger, and it provides kids a lot of very good methods in education.
Thank you. Sarah, question for you from the audience. Does Save the Children offer any online training for people interested in this kind of work?
So that's also a very good question. We don't offer online training outside of our normal programming contexts, but we are open to partnering with other organizations or partners within countries that want to use the approach. So that could be schools, it could be school systems, departments of education, or ministries of education, or local NGOs or international NGOs. And through that partnership, we would provide direct training and collaboration to initiate the HEART program in those new settings. Because of COVID, we have actually over the last year adapted some of our trainings to be online and remote, but this is a temporary situation while the technical teams are unable to travel and do in-person training, because nothing replaces being face-to-face in the same room with other people, creating art together, talking and sharing and listening and learning from each other. That's the gold standard for how we do this type of work. So yes, we do have opportunities to partner and support and to train others, but normally within the context of schools and programming systems within specific countries.
Thank you so much. And our last question in the last minute or so, and if you do want to learn more about Save the Children's work in HEART or in Syria, please visit savethechildren.org, either /Syria or /HEART. David and Sarah, this is from the audience, what support is needed for events with film and HEART where we can raise awareness? Where and how?
I can speak to the film, and I would love to do more events, frankly, with Sarah. And just on the note of supporting artists, all of the artists in our film, if you want to check out any of those artists, and I love what you're saying again, Sarah, about this sort of multidisciplinary aspect, because from choreographers to musicians to painters to experimental filmmakers, we've got a sort of great list of people. We curate kind of their events and sort of help direct you to these artists directly. So if you do want to buy some of their works or support these artists directly, it's on our website. And we would love to do more events like this. And as the film comes out and as we do distribution in the next 6 months or the next year, we would love to do more screenings outside inside more and more, hopefully. And these kinds of dialogues. I have a saying that I believe, which is a great film you start seeing after the credits roll. I look at this film like it's a sort of shield for the warriors like you, Sara, and Diala, and Negin, who are doing this kind of work. And I would love for the film to be used in situations like this, to engender dialogue and get people sort of thinking in new ways and taking action. So by all means, you can reach out to me directly, and we can find ways to collaborate together to set up more screenings and events. And there are many coming up in the next few months.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all so much for your time. Thank you to Concordia for hosting this with us. They'll send around a follow-up email with more information about the film and how to get in touch with all of us. And but really, thank you to all of our speakers and for all of you joining today. We really appreciate your time, and hope that you can learn more on SaveTheChildren.org to support Sara's great work with Heart, and also to see David's incredible film. And please follow up to see Diala's, really groundbreaking career and her gorgeous art all over the place. So thank you again, and look forward to seeing you all again soon.
Thank you all.